With its strong position in renewable energy sources and innovative drive and spirit, Iceland is often seen as the Silicon Valley for green and climate change solutions. It's such a pleasure to welcome Nótt Thorberg, Director of Green by Iceland, the gateway to Icelandic expertise in renewable solutions and sustainable innovation. Learn more about their innovative solutions and how the insurance industry can contribute to creating a more sustainable and green future for all. Please welcome Nótt Thorberg.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for stepping into the future with me today. I'm born at 331 ppms. That's the year I was born. And could I have the presentation, please? And we're at 420 ppms, in case you are wondering. It's a delight to be here today with you. This is my daughter, Ótta. She just turned 10 years old a couple of weeks ago. She loves sushi, as you can see from this picture. She will actually be my age in the year 2060. That's the same year China aims to become carbon neutral. She's my inspiration. She's my future. Some say the future has already arrived in Iceland. And this is a recent picture of a magazine showing what the future looks like in the near future in Iceland, actually, where we're going to tap into the earth. The future is closer than we think. And climate change, I mean, you don't really have to look at the data, the science that's out there. You just have to go outside. You probably see it as well in your P&Ls in the insurance industry. So we really have to think about this because we are at a state of emergency of people and planet. State of emergency. So do we just embrace for landing, for emergency landing, or do we actually change the direction that we're going? Can we be bold enough to change the direction we need to go? How do we actually get there? There's no one single answer to that question, but I'm going to give you a few inspirations maybe to help you glide into the correct direction. Do you know this bird, the Arctic tern? The Arctic tern is a magnificent bird. It glides around the air. And it's actually going 40,000 kilometers every single year around the world. And it nests in Iceland in the summer. The Arctic bird actually, of course, as most species in the world, feels the climate change. But they're very resilient. They're incredibly adaptive. And they're able to glide in the air, just using the breeze from the winds to get them where they want to go. That's a bit like the remarkable journey of Iceland. And our journey actually started over 100 years ago. That's when we started investing in renewable energy. And that's the first time we introduced geothermal power and electricity based on hydro resources. So as a result, today, we actually have 100% of our electricity and house heating needs based on renewables. And we are probably amongst the very few nations in the world that has 100% green grid around the entire island. Even so, we intend to go further. And we've set the goal to become carbon neutral by 2040, and amongst the first countries to reach the goal to become fossil fuel free. This means we're going to eliminate the fossil fuels within the next 16 years. And that's mostly in transportation on land, air, and sea. So how did we get there? And how are we going to continue? Let me tell you our story, our journey. I don't know how much you know about Iceland, but we have been living in unison with nature for many, many years, ever since Iceland was settled 100 years ago. And perhaps that closeness to nature has defined us in some sense. We are the most sparsely populated country in Europe, with vast areas of land. We are not a very big nation. I mean, it's me, it's the president of Iceland. He's actually looking really happy on this picture because he just touched ground from the first electric flight in Iceland. And then there's these kids here, and maybe a few more people. According to the National Statistics Agency, we're actually 386,732 people. So we're not that many, but we have ranked among the most happy nations of the world for many years, and we eat a lot of ice cream, even in the dark. You know us by the Northern Lights, and every once in a while, nature reminds us of our forces, and the forces in Iceland. And mind you, even if we have a volcanic eruption in Iceland going on at this very moment, it's still safe to travel to Iceland and visit, so don't worry about that if you want to come over. One of our key assets is, our resources, our natural resources. We have an abundance of natural resources. 10% of Iceland is covered with glaciers. And so as a result, we have a lot of water, geothermal, warm water, as well as cold water. And we have fish in the ocean, and we have lots of land. And for centuries, we were a fishing and farming nation until we reached this turning point. This was the beginning of the 1900s, 100 years ago, which brings me to the first inspiration. Practice courage. They say you should never waste a crisis. And Iceland was definitely facing one in the beginning of the 1900s. We were extremely poor, among the poorest countries in Europe in those days, very isolated. But the population was growing. We were dependent on other nations. We were importing fuels. But we had to find new alternatives. So we started looking for local resources, And it all grew from there. This is what Reykjavik looked in those days. Very polluted skies. Unfortunately, this is still the case in many cities around the world, still today. Polluted skies because of coal and peat. And this is basically what triggered our energy transition, and is, I think, triggering a lot of the action that is going on today all around the world. And here you see how we transitioned. Today, only 15% of the primary energy that we use in Iceland stems from fossil fuels. The remaining 85% is primary renewable energy, which comes from mostly geothermal, as you can see, but also hydro, and now we're introducing new energy alternatives. And geothermal has really been instrumental in all of this. 90% of our house heating is geothermal, and 30% of our electricity production. Embracing change wasn't really easy in those days. It took a lot of visionary leadership, a lot of courage. And when the town of Reykjavik actually implemented the first district central heating, this was in the year 1930, it had never been done at a scale. in the world. Never. And we had already made a lot of investments in other infrastructure, supporting gas and coal. So it didn't really come without controversies. So today we stand on the shoulders of these politicians, entrepreneurs, businesses that really were bold enough to take those actions, those steps, to get us down the path. And this is what Reykjavik looks today. Clear skies, no longer polluted. And you could say that the investments we made throughout the decades of our journey really lay the very foundation to the society that we are today. And we are a society of well-being and prosperity. We are no longer an isolated nation. We are no longer dependent on others. We are part of the world. And after a hard day's work, this is where we meet up in the swimming pools in Reykjavik, and we hear all the gossips, and we make most of the most important decisions, to tell you the truth. It was also good for our pockets. On an annual basis, it's been calculated by the National Energy Authority that we are saving around 3% of our GDP annually. That's a lot of money in the pocket. And it did not only result in financial gains, we also gained, of course, a lot more independence, as I mentioned, and it was a just and sustainable transition. These ladies here, they all have a reason to smile. They earned together 75% of the presidential votes for the elections that we had just a couple of weeks ago. And the one in the middle, Halla Tómasdóttir, is now becoming president on the 1st of August. So, in our case, our transition was not only about energy transition, it was also about transforming the society. And women's empowerment and the full inclusion and diversity was a really important part of that. And the same goes for the transformation that we all stand in front of now. So it really is about thinking in a new way. If we think about the future ahead of us, we really have to think about new ways of thinking. It requires a new approach. It's transition, yes, but it's more of a transformation, if you think about it. And it takes a lot of courage to go down that path. But if you really practice every day, you keep getting better at it. So practice courage. And this brings me to the second inspiration. Embrace creativity. Because the only way you can predict the future is to create it yourself. So I would encourage you to embrace your creativity and write a new chapter to your story every single day throughout big and small decisions that you're making. And creativity is really the mother of innovation. And we've, you could say in Iceland, taken the initial energy investments, the structures that we made, and taken them now to the next level. So Iceland has become, you could say, a hotbed for innovation. So now we're not using just the heat from the geothermal, we're also producing, of course, electricity, but we use the excess heat for a number of different applications, such as greenhouse farming, high-tech food production, health treatments, biotechnology, and so many different industry applications. I mean, who would have believed that Iceland would become the biggest producer of banana in Europe, actually? And nature also has a lot to teach us about recycling and circular economies, where the waste of what is used becomes a resource to retain value. And when you think about it, everything in nature is circular. And so tackling climate change is not only about building new energy systems, it's also about establishing circular systems. And this is an example of OnPower, who run the fourth biggest geothermal power station in the world, and they're now diversifying their business into a model of circularity. And they're in fact building an entire ecosystem around the plant today, offering businesses an opportunity to use different value streams so that the waste of one becomes a value for another. And there's plenty of value streams, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Blue Lagoon. The Blue Lagoon is actually one of those value streams that was created from a plant and came from the first resource park in Iceland, which was established over 50 years ago. And the revenue that comes from the Blue Lagoon and all the subsidiaries, the businesses that have grown around it, it by far outweighs the revenue that comes from the power plant. And we are even looking further ahead into the future. We're defining new horizons when it comes to sustainable food production. And just taking this company as an example, Orf Genetics, they are developing a range of growth factors by bioengineering barley grain. And they're using that for different applications. One of them is animal growth factors that enable the production of cultivated meat. And this is the Minister of Science and Innovation and the Minister of Food and Fisheries and Agriculture. They're enjoying the first ever European tasting of cultivated meat right in Iceland. Even at a larger scale, Iceland has been at the forefront of developing breakthrough technologies in carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Taking this company as an example, they have developed a unique technology to put carbon back where it belongs, in the ground. So they turn carbons that they capture from the plants or they can get from the air, working with other partners, into stone in just 2 years. So they're doing something that actually takes nature's thousands and thousands of years to do. And you might be asking, will this technology save us? Well, the answer to that is we need all the solutions we can get. We need to reduce the emissions, but we also have to capture a lot of carbon out there in the air. So these solutions are really important, and coupled with other solutions such as this one, the biggest developing carbon capture plant in the world, you could probably clean a lot of carbons from the air. And now we're even venturing into the center of the Earth. The Krafla magma testbed, it intends to tap into the full force of magma and use its, energy, basically. And that's in the near future. In the next 1-2 decades, we'll see that. Which makes me venture into maybe the third and most important ingredient of all of this is collaboration. None of the solutions that you've seen here would have been realized without a lot of collaboration. And Henry Ford once said, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, but working together is success. And only when we work together on solutions like these can we really make impactful change at a global scale. And that's our guiding light. And that's why platforms like the one I'm leading help to facilitate the process, the journey that we are on, and get all those stakeholders together. And I work alongside a lot of stakeholders, both within the government as well as the private sector. And our goal is to strengthen the collaboration. So we bring together these stakeholders, and we are always getting better and better at working together. Because at the end of the day, tackling climate crisis, it's really a team sport. It's really, you have to approach it from that level. And you could say this is our national team. We're attending COP in these pictures, COP 28. And so if you're going to COP 29, well, we'd be happy to meet you there. We also work within Iceland and at an international level. So we support a number of initiatives and partnerships like clean energy and climate partnerships, such as the one that was recently signed with the US and Secretary of State of Energy in the US, Jennifer Granholm. And all of this is in effort to support shared climate efforts that can take place within Iceland, but can also be brought to the world. And imagine the potential if you take some of the solutions that have already been tried and tested in Iceland, and you take them at a scale. And actually, that's already happening. So if you look at the dots here, they just represent some examples of Icelandic solutions or expertise that has been brought abroad. And just by looking at the dot from China there, well, that dot, that small dot, actually represents 70 different district heating systems which have been implemented in 70 towns, cities in China. The accumulated value of the greenhouse gas reductions of those cities, it by far outweighs the greenhouse gas emissions that we are emitting as a nation. So there's a lot to be gained. So this brings me to the last and final inspiration for you to take home with you, and that's time for action. The time of action has really come. And I know that you are all change makers as well. So I'm inviting you to step into the future with me and think about, how you can drive transformations, big and small ones, in your industry, in your companies, in your space. Think about how you can go from creativity to innovation. Think about how you can redefine growth, how you can become more circular in everything that you're doing. You have a role to play. We all have a role to play. And we need all the solutions out there. So I'm pretty sure that you will contribute. There's a lot of untapped potential. You might be thinking, geothermal, that's not something for us. But actually, it is. You can see from this picture here, actually that there's huge potential for geothermal in Europe alone. And 50% of the house heating and cooling in the world is really 50%, is the climate, kind of like the climate challenge that we face, you could say. And so if we would only be able to tap into this potential and realize it, it would mean a lot. But geothermal is still very underrepresented in the world. It only represents 1% of the energy mix in the world. But it could do so much more, even if it's not the solution, it's one of the solutions that we need to look at. And I know that you're all into figures as well. The fact is, as I've already shown you, it's pretty good business to look at these figures and geothermal. But you have to look at it from a long-term perspective. The return on investment takes some time. And just as Iceland's example shows you, well, there's much more to be gained from it. So it's not just about the energy transition, it's also opening up a new chapter of opportunities, job opportunities to drive systematic climate change that we need. And you can play a role in that. I mean, in the next 6 years, we need to triple up on renewable energy in the entire world. So how could you contribute to that? You know, what new products, investments could you make within your industry? How can you pitch in? I'm not an expert, but you are. So I'm asking you to broaden your horizon and really have a serious look to support the type of climate solutions we really need out there, and to support the entrepreneurs that we've also had the pleasure of meeting this morning. So my question to you, my final question to you, is how can we work together? How can you work together to create a collective impact on the journey that we all need to go on? How will you contribute to climate action? How will you practice? Practice every day courage. Embrace creativity to go to innovation and collaborate, just as we have been doing in Iceland. I'm sure you're already doing a lot, but the reality is we really have to do more and much faster. So, what will be your remarkable journey in all of that? What is your inspiration? See you in the future.